The chill of the autumn air seeped through my jacket as I trudged along the winding path, leaves crunching beneath my boots. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, casting the forest into an inky darkness. I should have known better than to venture into these woods alone, especially after dark, but curiosity had a way of overriding common sense. The trees loomed overhead like skeletal fingers reaching for the heavens, their branches swaying ominously in the breeze. Every rustle of the leaves sent a shiver down my spine, and I quickened my pace, eager to escape the suffocating silence that enveloped me. But then I heard it, a faint whispering, like the murmur of distant voices carried on the wind. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It was probably just my imagination, I told myself, a trick of the mind brought on by fear. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving their way through the trees like tendrils of smoke. I stumbled forward, my pulse racing, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I needed to get out of here, to find my way back to the safety of civilization. But the path seemed to stretch on endlessly, leading me deeper into the heart of the forest, away from the safety of the world I knew. And then I saw it, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision, a shadowy figure darting between the trees. My blood ran cold as I realized I was not alone in these woods, that something or someone was watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I broke into a run, my footsteps echoing through the silent forest, the whispers growing louder with each passing moment. I could feel ice boring into the back of my skull, could sense the malevolent presence lurking just beyond the reach of my senses. But no matter how fast I ran, how desperately I tried to escape, the forest seemed to stretch on endlessly, its twisted paths leading me in endless circles. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized I was hopelessly lost, trapped in a nightmarish maze with no way out. And then I saw her, a woman standing in the clearing ahead, her pale face illuminated by the silvery light of the moon. She was beautiful, unearthly, her eyes shining with a strange, otherworldly light. I wanted to run, to flee from this spectral apparition and never look back. But something held me in place, rooted to the spot as if by invisible chains. And then she spoke, her voice a soft, melodic whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Welcome to my forest," she said, her words echoing through the darkness. "You are brave to venture here alone, mortal. But bravery will not save you now." I tried to speak, to plead for mercy, but no sound escaped my lips. It was as if I had been rendered mute by the sheer terror of her presence. The woman smiled, her lips curling into a cruel, mocking grin. "Do not be afraid," she said. "Your suffering will be short-lived." And then she was upon me, her fingers cold as ice as she reached out to touch my face. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable, but instead of pain, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, a sensation of peace, of serenity, as if all the worries and fears of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. When I opened my eyes again, the woman was gone, the forest silent once more. I stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened, before I turned and fled into the night, determined to put as much distance between myself and the whispering woods as humanly possible. But even now, as I sit here in the safety of my own home, I can still hear the whispers echoing in the depths of my mind, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of our reality. And I know that no matter how far I run, no matter how hard I try to forget, I will never truly escape the darkness that now haunts my dreams. The first time I laid eyes on Willow Lake Manor, I knew there was something not quite right about it. Perched on the edge of the water like a silent sentinel, the old mansion seemed to exude an aura of foreboding, its dark windows staring out at the world with a malevolent gaze. But despite the warnings of the locals, I couldn't resist the allure of the abandoned estate. There was a mystery to it, a sense of history and secrets waiting to be uncovered. So, when I inherited the property from a distant relative I'd never even met, I jumped at the chance to explore its hidden depths. The day I moved in, a chill wind swept across the lake, sending ripples dancing across its surface. As I stepped through the front doors, the air grew heavy with the weight of years gone by, the echoes of past lives lingering in the dusty halls. The house was like a maze, its corridors twisting and turning in on themselves, leading me deeper into its heart. I spent hours exploring every nook and cranny, uncovering forgotten treasures hidden beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. But as night fell, the atmosphere changed, shifting from curiosity to unease. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Strange noises echoed through the empty halls, the creaking of floorboards and the whisper of unseen voices. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild, but as the days passed, the disturbances grew more pronounced. Objects would move on their own, disappearing from one room only to reappear in another. Doors would slam shut without warning, their hinges groaning in protest. And then there were the dreams, vivid, unsettling visions that seemed to seep into my subconscious like tendrils of darkness. I would find myself wandering the halls of Willow Lake Manor, the air thick with an oppressive sense of dread. Shadows lurked in every corner, their eyes gleaming with malice as they watched my every move. I knew I should leave, to pack my bags and never look back. But something held me in place, a strange fascination with the house and its secrets. I needed to know what lay hidden beneath its crumbling facade, to uncover the truth behind the whispers that echoed through its halls. One night, as I lay awake in bed, I heard it, the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the darkness. My blood ran cold as I realized I was not alone in the house, that there was something or someone else lurking in the shadows. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest, until I came to a small room tucked away at the end of a forgotten corridor. The door creaked open on rusty hinges, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. Toys littered the floor, their once bright colors faded and worn. A rocking horse stood in the corner, its wooden frame swaying back and forth of its own accord. And in the center of the room stood a little girl, her eyes wide with fear as she stared back at me. I reached out to her, my hand trembling with uncertainty, but she backed away, disappearing into the darkness. And then I saw them, the shadows, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision, their forms twisted and distorted like something out of a fever dream. I turned and fled, the echoes of the girl's laughter following me down the hallway. But no matter how fast I ran, I could not escape the feeling of eyes watching me, of unseen forces closing in around me. As I burst through the front doors of Willow Lake Manor, gasping for breath, I knew I could never return. The house had claimed its final victim, ensnaring me in its web of darkness and despair. And even now, as I sit here in the safety of my new home, I can still feel its presence lurking just beyond the edge of my consciousness, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The haunting of Willow Lake Manor is far from over, its secrets destined to remain hidden beneath the surface for all eternity. I still remember the first time I met her, the way her laughter danced in the air, her eyes shimmering like emeralds in the sunlight. Samantha was her name, and from the moment we locked eyes, I knew she was different. We fell in love quickly, our hearts entwined in a bond that felt unbreakable. But little did I know, our love story would turn into a nightmare beyond my darkest dreams. It all started innocently enough. Samantha and I had been dating for a few months, and everything seemed perfect. We spent our days exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company. But then strange things began to happen. It began with small incidents, like objects inexplicably moving around the apartment or strange noises echoing in the dead of night. I brushed them off as mere coincidences, attributing them to old pipes or the settling of the building. But as the days went by, the occurrences grew more frequent and unsettling. Samantha started acting strangely too. She would often zone out mid-conversation, her eyes losing focus as if she were somewhere else entirely. When I asked her about it, she would simply smile and claim she was tired or stressed from work. But I knew there was something more going on beneath the surface. One night, as we lay in bed, I woke to find Samantha sitting upright, her gaze fixed on something unseen. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. It was as if she were in a trance, her body rigid and unresponsive. Fear crept into my chest as I reached out to touch her, but before I could, she suddenly snapped out of it, blinking rapidly as if awakening from a deep sleep. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling with anxiety. She shook her head, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't know. I feel like someone's watching us." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as a chill ran down my spine. But I tried to reassure her, chalking it up to her imagination running wild in the darkness of the night. But the feeling of unease lingered, festering like a wound that refused to heal. I couldn't shake the sensation that we were being watched, that there was something lurking in the shadows just beyond our sight. As days turned into weeks, Samantha's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would disappear for hours on end without explanation, only to return home with no memory of where she had been or what she had been doing. I tried to confront her about it, but she would always brush me off, claiming she had simply lost track of time or gotten caught up in work. I wanted to believe her, I truly did, but doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind, whispering dark suspicions that I dared not entertain. And then, one fateful night, everything came crashing down around us. I woke to the sound of Samantha's screams echoing through the apartment, shrill and piercing in the dead of night. Heart pounding in my chest, I stumbled out of bed and raced to her side, dread coiling in the pit of my stomach. I found her thrashing wildly in the grip of some unseen force, her eyes wide with terror as she clawed at the air as if trying to fend off an invisible attacker. I called out to her, begging her to snap out of it, but she was lost in the grip of whatever malevolent entity had taken hold of her. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Samantha collapsed onto the floor, her body trembling as she gasped for breath, tears streaming down her face. I held her close, whispering words of comfort as I struggled to make sense of what had just happened. But deep down, I knew the truth. Whatever had attacked Samantha was no mere figment of her imagination. It was real, and it was coming for us. In the days that followed, the attacks grew more frequent and more violent. Samantha became a shell of her former self, haunted by visions of unspeakable horror that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. I tried everything to protect her, seeking out the help of priests and psychics in a desperate bid to rid our home of the malevolent presence that had taken hold of her. But it was all in vain. The entity refused to be banished, its grip on Samantha growing stronger with each passing day. And then, one night, as I lay awake in bed, tormented by fear and uncertainty, I saw it. A dark shape materialized in the corner of the room, its form shifting and twisting in the darkness like smoke on the wind. I watched in horror as it slithered towards the bed, its eyes burning with a malevolent light as it fixed its gaze upon Samantha, who lay beside me, oblivious to the danger that lurked just inches away. With a scream that echoed through the night, I threw myself between them, determined to protect the woman I loved at any cost. But as I collided with the entity, I felt a searing pain rip through my chest, black tendrils of shadow tearing into my flesh as if I were nothing more than paper to be shredded by the wind. And then, everything went dark. When I awoke, Samantha was gone. There was no sign of her, no trace of the horrors that had haunted us in the night. It was as if she had never existed at all. I searched for her for weeks, months, years, but she was nowhere to be found. And as time passed, the memory of her began to fade, like a dream slipping through my fingers as I struggled to hold on to the fragments of reality that remained. But deep down, I knew the truth. Samantha was not lost to me, not truly. She was out there somewhere, trapped in the clutches of the entity that had stolen her from me, its dark embrace holding her captive for all eternity. And as I sit here now, alone in the darkness of the night, I can feel its presence lurking just beyond the edge of perception, waiting patiently for the moment when it will come for me. Its spectral embrace drawing me into the depths of madness from which there can be no escape.